This is Pinnacle Webinar Series, Episode 41, Health Span versus Lifespan, Adding Life to Your Years. I'm Dr. Greg Green. I'm delighted that you've joined me for this webinar. Today we're going to talk about something that affects every one of us, regardless of our age, our financial situation, our career, or where we happen to be in life. And the subject is health span versus lifespan. Now, those two words may sound familiar, but they represent two different ways of thinking about our future. Lifespan is essentially how long we live. Health span is how long we live with the ability to be healthy, active, independent, engaged, and able to enjoy the things that make life meaningful. And here's the question I want you to think about throughout this presentation. Would you rather simply live longer or live better for longer? Because those aren't necessarily the same thing. We have become very good at extending life. Modern medicine has accomplished remarkable things. People are living longer than previous generations, but living longer doesn't automatically mean living better. And that's where the conversation about health span becomes so important. Lifespan is not the whole story. Let's start with something very simple. Imagine two people. Person A lives to be 90, person B lives to be 90. On paper, they have exactly the same lifespan. But imagine that person A remains active, socially connected, mentally engaged, physically capable, and independent well into their 80s. They travel, they spend time with family, they pursue hobbies, they volunteer, they continue learning. They have meaningful relationships. They wake up with something to look forward to. Now imagine person B. Perhaps their final 15 or 20 years are dominated by declining mobility, chronic illness, isolation, loss of independence, and an inability to participate in the activities that they once loved. Both people lived to 90, but did they experience the same life? That's distinctions. That's the distinction between lifespan and health span. Lifespan asks, how long did I live? Health span asks, how long was I able to live well? And I believe the second question deserves far more attention. Why health span matters. When people think about a retirement, they often focus on money. They ask, do I have enough? Will my investments last? Can I afford to travel? When can I stop working? Those are important questions, but there is another question that may be even more important. What am I going to be physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially capable of doing with those years? Because money can create opportunities, but your health determines how many of those opportunities you can actually experience. Think about it. You could have the resources to travel around the world, but what happens if you don't have the physical ability to travel? You could have plenty of money, but what happens if, you know, you no longer have the energy and vitality to enjoy it? You could retire at 62, but what if you haven't thought about what you're retiring to? That is why planning should never only be about financial planning. It should be about life planning. The four dimensions of health span. When we talk about health span, I want you to think beyond simply not being sick. Health span has multiple dimensions. Number one, physical health. The first is physical. Can you move? Can you walk comfortably? Can you maintain strength and balance? Can you participate in activities that matter to you? Can you maintain your independence? Physical health doesn't mean you have to become an athlete. It means taking care of the body that carries you through life. And sometimes the goal isn't extraordinary fitness. Sometimes the goal is simply, I want to remain capable of walking, traveling, playing with grandchildren, capable of getting up from a chair, capable of enjoying your life. Number two is mental and cognitive health. That's the second dimension. Our brains need stimulation just as our bodies do. Learning something new, reading, having meaningful conversations, solving problems, trying new experiences, being curious. These activities can help us remain mentally engaged. One of the most dangerous things we can do as we age is assume that our best learning years are behind us. They aren't. You may be entering a period of life where you finally have the time and freedom to explore subjects you've always wanted to understand. You can learn an instrument, learn another language, write a book, start a business, mentor someone, study history, take a class, learn technology, travel somewhere you've never been. Your age doesn't eliminate your capacity for curiosity. Now, number three is dimension, is emotional well being. So, we're talking about emotional health. This is one that is often overlooked. We talk about eating better, we talk about exercise, we talk about financial planning, but we don't always talk about unresolved grief, disappointment, regret, fear, loneliness, or the emotional transitions that accompany major life changes. Retirement can bring us enormous freedom, but it can also bring us enormous adjustment. You may lose a professional identity. You may experience an empty nest. You may lose colleagues. You may experience divorce or the death of a spouse. Friendships may change. Your daily structure may disappear. And suddenly you find yourself asking, who am I now? That isn't a financial question. That is a life design question. Number four, social connection. Human beings are social creatures. We need people. We need relationships. We need belonging. We need meaningful interaction. And sometimes retirement unintentionally reduces our social world. We stop going to work. We see coworkers less frequently. Children move away. Friends relocate. Schedule changes. And little by little, our world becomes smaller. That's why connection is not a luxury. It's an important part of living well. And that's one of the reasons we created Connections at Pinnacle Transformation Group. We believe people need opportunities to talk, learn, share experiences, meet new people, and explore what their next chapter can look like. Now, let's talk about the retirement gap. Here's something I want you to think about. There is often a gap between the number of years we expect to live and the number of years we expect to live independently and actively. Let's call that the retirement gap. You may retire at 65, you may have another 25 or 30 years. That's potentially a quarter of a century. Think about that. 25 years isn't a vacation, it's a chapter. And the question becomes, how are you going to design that next chapter? Too many people, they spend decades preparing for retirement financially, but almost no time preparing psychologically, socially, and physically, and purposely. We prepare for money, but we don't prepare for life. And that can create a tremendous disconnect. Purpose may be just as important as planning. Let me ask you something. If someone handed you enough money today and you never have to work again, what would you do tomorrow morning? Think about that. Not what you would buy, not where you would travel, not what you would do. Who would you spend time with? What would you give your day meaning? What would get you out of bed? What would you contribute? What would you learn? Who would you help? What would you build? Those questions are incredibly important because retirement isn't simply the end of work. It is the beginning of a different relationship with your time. And time may be one of the most valuable resources you have. Five questions I want you to ask yourself. So let me give you the five questions. I encourage you to write these down. Question one: what do I want my life to look like 5 or 10 years from now? Not what do I want my finances to look like? What do I want my life to look like? Question number two: what activities give me energy rather than taking away energy? Pay attention to that. Some things drain us, other things make us feel alive. Your future should contain more of the second category. Okay? What makes you feel alive? Question three: who are the people I want to remain connected to? And perhaps even more importantly, who are the people I need to meet? Your next chapter may require a new community. Question four: what do I want to learn, experience, or accomplish? Don't assume that because you're entering retirement, your growth has ended. It may be actually beginning. Question five: what can I begin doing today that will improve the quality of my future years? Not next year, not someday, today. Because health span isn't created overnight, it is influenced by the choices we make consistently over time. You don't have to change everything Now, what I want to make something very clear, this isn't about for perfection. You don't have to completely reinvent your life tomorrow. You don't have to become a marathon runner. You don't have to completely change your diet. You don't have to sell your house and move across the world. You don't have to make dramatic changes. Sometimes transformation begins with something very small. Take a walk, call a friend, join a group, learn something new, schedule that trip, have the conversation you've been avoiding, start writing, volunteer, reconnect with your spouse, spend more time outside, create a morning routine, find something that gives your life meaning. Small choices can become powerful habits, and powerful habits can influence the trajectory of your life. The Pinnacle perspective. At Pinnacle Transformation Group, we look at this differently. We don't believe retirement should simply be about stopping. We believe it should be about starting a new chapter, starting a new relationship, starting a new adventure, starting habits, starting new dreams, starting a relationship with yourself. That's why our philosophy focuses on transformational living. We believe your next chapter deserves intentional design because there's a tremendous difference between simply getting older and growing to the next version of yourself. So, the three questions, and this is as we wrap up, I want to leave you with these three questions. First, how long do you want to live? That's the lifespan question. Second, how well do you want to live during these years? That's the health span question. And third, what do you want those years to mean? That's the purpose question. And perhaps the third question is the most important of all, because adding years to your life is wonderful. But what if we could add to those years? Like also add life to those years. I want you to imagine something. Imagine waking up at 75 and still being curious. Imagine being 80 and still having places you want to go. Imagine 85 and still having people who can't wait to see. Imagine being 90 and still having something meaningful to contribute. That's the vision, not simply living longer, but living with vitality, connection, purpose, independence, and meaning as for as long as possible. And here's the beautiful thing. Your next chapter doesn't have to look like your last chapter. You're not finished, you're not too old, and it's not too late to begin designing a life that reflects who you're becoming. At Pinnacle Transformation Group, we believe that transformation isn't something that happens to us. It's something we participate in. So don't simply ask, how many years do I have left? Ask, what am I going to do with those years I have? Because the goal isn't merely, it's not merely to have, excuse me, um, it's not merely to have a longer life. The goal is to have a richer life, a more connected life, a healthier life, a more purposeful life, a more intentional life, a life that you don't simply survive, but a life that you truly experience. So thank you for joining me today. And if this conversation caused you to think differently about your own future, I invite you to continue the conversations with us through Connections, our free opportunity to meet, engage, ask questions, share ideas, and explore what your next chapter might look like. Because sometimes the most important transformation begins with a simple conversation. Your next chapter is waiting. The question is, what will I do with it? And here is an option. Final website call to action. Ready to explore your next chapter? Join us for Connections, Pinnacle Transformations, free live conversation for adults who are approaching retirement, recently retired, or simply asking what's next. No cost, no obligation, no sales presentation. Just meaningful conversation about purpose, health, relationship, personal growth, connection, and intentional living. Your life isn't over when you retire. It may be where your most meaningful chapter begins. Also, check us out on our website. That's www.pinnacletransformationgroup.org. Thank you.